And so here we are, the moment Tintin more or less became the series I loved so much as a kid and developed the style and tone it became most known for. The storytelling and artwork took a massive boost in quality here, very much as a result of Hergé finally having creative control on the project and working hard to develop his craft. Wallace seemed willing to give Hergé more freedom at this point, and would be removed from his head position halfway through this story's production in 1933, so Hergé could finally do what he wanted. And what he wanted to do was a globe-trotting, conspiracy-filled mystery and adventure story. More than any Tintin book before it, this one is just a lot of fun. I've always been incredibly thankful this was the first I read. After 3 books of mediocrity or, crap, reading this one again was an outright blast. I might actually enjoy talking about it. So, let's get into Cigars of the Pharaoh. The plot of this book is much more intricate than what we've gotten from Tintin up until now, as Tintin uncovers a conspiracy involving several characters. The format of Tintin going from place to place and running into wacky situations is still somewhat there, but there at least seems like there's more of a connection between it all now, and some parts of the plot are actually quite riveting. We begin with Tintin and Snowy on a cruise ship, ready for some holiday after their previous adventure. In the English version, Snowy mentions Marlinspike, a house that wouldn't feature in the books for years. It's fucking weird. He soon runs into Professor Sarcophagus, a much less funny precursor to Professor Calculus. Hergé loved his wacky professors. He's lost his grip on a valuable paper that's blowing overboard. Tintin tries to help but fails due to some obvious physical comedy. Soon though, it turns out this was just his travel brochure and he had the real papers the whole time. He just forgot because he's quirky that way. Sarcophagus reveals that the paper is papyrus leading to the tomb of an Egyptian pharaoh located in Cairo. He offers to allow Tintin to join him on his expedition to find it, and Tintin, being the character who goes wherever the plot needs him to, accepts. As the two of them part ways, Sarcophagus runs afoul of one of the most likeable and endearing characters in the entire series, Mr. Rastapopoulos, who swears vengeance on Tintin when he breaks the two up. We see some shadowy mastermind writing an order to have Tintin disposed of. Now, I wonder who this could be. Certainly not the guy who just swore vengeance on him. No, that would be ridiculous. The next morning, Tintin is introduced to two of the best characters in the entire series, the comedically inept Thompson twins, who arrest him for drug smuggling. It seems some heroin has been planted in his room. He escapes his imprisonment with embarrassing ease, and by pure chance runs into Sarcophagus again. Although he is now on the run from the law, Tintin decides to proceed with the hunt for Kiosk's tomb, with the Thompsons in hot pursuit. Tintin and Sarcophagus find the tomb, with Tintin noticing a cigar outside with the mark of the Pharaoh on the band. Sarcophagus disappears into the tomb, and Tintin follows him in. We now get a fucking creepy image of the various explorers who had previously found the tomb, all mummified with their dead faces exposed. Our three heroes have spots already waiting for them, which naturally freaks Tintin the fuck out. Tintin finds more of the strange cigars, but is soon gassed before he can work out what's going on. Man, it just feels so weird to be reciting a plot that isn't just Tintin wanders around randomly for the entire book. Already the story is a million times more gripping than what came before. The mystery of just what the hell is going on here really makes you want to keep reading. While there are still the usual contrivances here and there, I can accept them a lot more, as they're necessary to get to the really good stuff. Tintin's unconscious body is put into a coffin, as are Snowy's and Sarcophagus's, but by virtue of yet another of those impossibly convenient contrivances, the coffins are accidentally moved out of the tomb and put into a drug smuggling ship. The people behind the scheme are as dumb as they are sadistic, it seems. In the colour version, we get a cameo from Alan here, who was a recurring villain later on. It doesn't amount to much though, since the coffins are soon thrown overboard to evade a police search. Out at sea, Tintin awakens to see Sarcophagus's coffin drifting away, but manages to keep Snowy's tethered to his as they drift along aimlessly. I really love the visual of the coffin being sailed along the sea. There's something very surreal and morbid about it. They get hit by a massive wave, and Tintin wakes in a cargo ship because his guardian angel really is working overtime. We meet the ship's captain, who explains he just happened to be passing as Tintin got hit. Also, we get this sleazy salesman type who's way less funny than he's probably meant to be. In a rare idiotic moment, Tintin actually gets fooled by him. Also, the ship has black slaves because we needed just a bit of racism there. As the ship docks, Tintin wanders on land to find a woman being beaten by some bandits. He chases them away. However, in an overplayed old gag, it turns out he's just disrupted a movie set. Rastapopoulos turns out to be producing the film, and I have to say, he takes Tintin's disruption really well, even apologising for his earlier argument with him. Man, this sudden unexplained change in personality just shows what a great guy he is. It's always great when people can settle their disagreements. Shortly, Tintin heads back to the ship, only to discover that guns are being smuggled in the hold. He's captured by the captain, who thinks he's a police officer, and gets tied up. This captain is no haddock. But this is all interrupted by a timely intervention from the Thompsons. They capture Tintin, but through their usual idiocy, they manage to lose him again. It's both hilarious and contrived. Tintin swims back to land and meets that lovely man Rastapopoulos, who gives him water as Tintin walks out into the desert, only for him to get ambushed by bandits who shoot right through the water flask Rastapopoulos just gave him. Damn, what bad luck that was. Through some contrived circumstances, Tintin ends up drafted into an army. It turns out that one of the colonels he's working for just happens to be part of the conspiracy by astounding coincidence. He discovers the mark of Pharaoh in the colonel's office, but is soon apprehended. Showing a surprising amount of competence, the Thompsons save him solely so they can be the ones to arrest him. Tintin escapes them again, however, and ends up on a plane where he is shot down into a jungle. There, he crosses paths with a sick elephant. Amazingly for him, he decides to actually help the elephant with its sickness instead of killing it for its ivory. For this, he is appointed the elephant doctor by the elephant's herd, learning to communicate with them through trumpet, and this whole segment is completely pointless, out of place, and fucking dumb. He runs into Calculus Mark 1 again, who is scribbling the mark of the Pharaoh all over the jungle, and seems to have gone quite mad. The comic's depiction of mental illness isn't exactly progressive, to be honest. He takes him to a doctor living in a jungle to get help, who recommends he be taken to a psychiatric ward. Tintin stays the night for a dinner party which various guests attend. He's shown a Hindu dagger, which is meant to point towards anyone whose life is in danger. In a great ominous moment, it's dropped and points towards him. I really like this hint of something supernatural going on. The book is filled with them, which gives it a very ominous feel, even though the plot itself is actually quite mundane. Sarcophagus escapes into the night, causing one of the guests to faint. I really enjoy the atmosphere of this whole party scene, and wish it could have lasted longer, as it could have done with more build-up to really hammer in the tension and dread it creates. Tintin finds Sarcophagus, and discovers he's being controlled by a Thacker. Long story short, it turns out that the Thacker is working for a drug smuggling organisation who infect their enemies with the poison of madness to get them out of the way. The drug smuggling ring have a very threatening presence throughout the story and end up adding quite a lot of tension that was lacking in the previous installments. We find out they're victimising an entire kingdom, which adds quite a lot to their threat. Of course, the gangsters in Tintin in America had a similar kind of power, but it was played more or less for laughs. Here it is dead serious and very scary. Tintin befriends a Maharaja who explains how his country had been victimised by them for years now, and how his family have been threatened by them. The fact that they are feared by someone in power instantly makes them a much more credible threat than pretty much any Tintin villain to come before them. Tintin discovers they have a hideout literally just under the Maharaja's palace. They apparently all meet up there in hoods to discuss their evil doings. He disguises himself as one of the members and infiltrates a meeting. He's almost uncovered, but he manages to knock all of the gang leaders out, because of course he still has his super strength. The Thompsons burst in, but it turns out they know Tintin is one of the good guys this time. They raided the gang's base in Cairo and found Tintin on the gang's list of enemies, clearing him of all charges. They appear to have won, but it turns out the leader of the entire gang has kidnapped the Maharaja's son, who has never been mentioned before and has seemingly just appeared out of nowhere. Tintin and the Thompsons pursue them and, Tintin pursues them. This leads to a genuinely thrilling cliff-top climax as the Fakir faces off against Tintin. He's beaten by the incompetence of his own boss, and then the boss is defeated as well by said incompetence, as he trips over the cliff and falls to his seeming death, his identity not revealed. Luckily, Tintin manages to save the Maharaja's son, and all seems wrapped up. In the paper, we get a story about Tintin's victory, and also Rastapopoulos is missing. Oh no, he was such a lovable guy. So everything's wrapped up, and the Maharaja promises to get Sarcophagus some mental help. We end with Tintin wondering who the mastermind could have been. Yes, I wonder. So many suspects to choose from. So yeah, this plot can be muddled and convoluted, and honestly sounds a lot stupider when I say it all out loud. But it keeps your attention, and it set the template for the several mystery and adventure stories in the series. The drug smuggling conspiracy and the poison of madness add a real sense of threat to the story, and at times it really is quite foreboding. Stuff like Tintin talking to the elephants is silly and completely pointless, but it never really grates on me, to be honest. It's telling that this was the first two-parter in the series. Congo and America kinda were connected, but I wouldn't really call them a two-parter. The plot was interesting enough that it definitely warranted an extended length to really do itself justice. The most striking stuff definitely comes early on, when Tintin's in the tomb. Seeing all those corpses wrapped in bandages was shockingly dark, especially before you know what's really going on. Hergé based this element on the supposed curse of Tutankhamun's tomb, where several archaeologists who opened it died shortly afterwards. He'd returned to this well in the 7 crystal balls, which made for probably the best Tintin story of all time, one that probably wouldn't have been possible without this one. Tintin in this story is finally a likeable guy, except for a scene where he scolds a guy with boiling fucking soup! But okay, I guess that was kind of an accident, I guess. Overall, he's much less smug, he's courteous, he doesn't show much racism. He is incredibly bland, but at least I'm not rooting for the criminals this time. He gets a few funny lines here and there, and even though he's often saved by luck still, just as many problems he escapes through guile, and it's nice to be able to at least admire his intelligence. Also, beating up a fucking tiger because apparently bears weren't hardcore enough for him. Sarcophagus is your standard quirky professor. Well, he is prior to going mad anyway. There's nothing wrong with him, but as I said, the quirky professor archetype is something Hergé kind of perfected with Alculus to a T, and so Sarcophagus can't help but feel kind of underwhelming when we know a much funnier version of him will be coming up later. Even without that though, none of his jokes made me laugh out loud or anything. When he goes insane, his raving and quirkiness can become kind of tiresome, and the depiction of mental illness can be a little bit uncomfortable. Very, very, very stereotypical. The Thompson twins are a revelation here though. After 3 books of stereotypes and blandness, it's amazing to have 2 characters with so much personality who are endearingly funny and have such instantly iconic designs. It's been said they're actually a lot more competent here than they would be in later books, which I can kind of see with how they save Tintin and Snowy's asses, but they still have impossibly stupid moments. To be fair, I guess any competence is something to be noted given just how stupid they become later. Oh man, but, I can't be too harsh. I love them. They try their best, The evil Fakir manages to be genuinely quite chilling at times, and what he does to people is really terrifying. He is a bit camp and definitely a stereotype though. Rastapopoulos has possibly the most complex character arc in the series. In fact, in the entire medium of comics. Swearing vengeance on Tintin seconds after meeting him, then in his next scene being a completely lovely guy. See, he changes and grows throughout the comic. He even helps Tintin in the end. I mean, what a guy. The mysterious figure Tintin chases at the end comes across as a bit of a buffoon, honestly. But there is some real intrigue to him thanks to his mysterious identity. It's a secret so well concealed that there's no way of knowing who he could have been. Alan's cameo in the colour version is pretty cool to see, and it ties in smoothly with his later appearances. It's a shame he couldn't have had a bigger role, but I guess for the sake of continuity, he couldn't have met Tintin before the events of The Crab with the Golden Claws, his first canonical appearance. The Maharaja is kind of a walking plot device to get Tintin out of trouble and show how high up the conspiracy goes and how hard it hits his country. He doesn't have much personality, aside from being, well, nice. Snowy has his usual cheesy one-liners and some nice comedy skits here and there. He's consistently been the funniest parts of the previous books, but now he gets kind of overshadowed by some of the comedy going on elsewhere. I do always find it amazing just how reliable he is for a dog, though. I mean, I guess that speaks for dogs in any work of escapist fiction at the end of the day. I think him being so damn cute helps raise the tension when things aren't going so well for him. He's very easy to sympathise with. Of course, he can also diffuse some of the darker moments in the story with his humour, which I think is a good thing because, Tintin can't all be disturbing shit. In the black and white version, Hergé's art had become far more ambitious, with some really nice full page panels and some moments with a lot of atmosphere, like when Tintin's going down the tunnel to the organisation's meeting room and he's consumed in shadow. It really gives off the vibe of him walking into danger. The backgrounds have the most detail they've had, and I think this is where Hergé really began solidifying that style of his. We get the earliest instances of Hergé's trippy dream sequences, which would become a staple of the series. It's a great example of them. The original version makes it a little scarier than the colour version. The slightly more simplistic style of the original artwork and lack of colour makes it seem much darker and more abstract. Images like the tomb and the coffins in the sea are instantly memorable and feel really milked for all their worth. The story is truly iconic, in large part because of just how well they're handled. The Thompsons always struck me as having a very simple but effective design, with the classic suit and bowler hats. I think you just need to take one look at them to guess their roles as suspicious inspector characters. The visual gag of them both looking identical but for their mustaches is also pretty amusing. One character design that really needs highlighting is Rastapopoulos'. The ridiculous massive nose, monocle and cigar are instantly memorable. It makes the character really stand out. There are accusations that he was deliberately designed to be a Jewish stereotype, which, I don't think I can really deny. The colour edition is definitely what I'd recommend overall. It features Hergé's excellent perfected style, and overall feels a lot more in line with the larger series. It is a shame that a lot of the full page panels get taken out yet again, but understandable given the more limited page count the colour editions were given. There are some weird continuity touches added. The Alan cameo makes perfect sense for sure, but it's also bizarre during one sequence where they show the cover to a book that hadn't even happened yet within the universe. The context is meant to be a real life exploit of Tintin's that got made into a comic, so I don't know. It's a psychic. The person who made it is psychic in this universe, I guess. All in all, the artwork here is very much a triumph in both versions. Reading the black and white version, it's amazing to see how far Hergé came in a relatively short period of time, and reading the colour version, you can really appreciate how far he came overall. In conclusion, while I definitely see more problems with this story than I did as a kid, it still holds up really well. It's one of Tintin's more cinematic adventures, especially towards the end. I almost wonder why it wasn't adapted into a film. It's really the perfect sequel to the other books. Everything's improved upon in some way, and it really does feel like a book for all ages, with some goofy comedy mixed in with genuinely disturbing themes and ideas. Up next is the second part to this story, and one of the most acclaimed Tintin books ever, Tintin and the Blue Lotus.